Hey everyone, this is Professor Bapu, your personal guide to Civilization 6. I boil down all the complex intricacies of this massive game down to what you absolutely need to know to win a game. So today we're going to be talking about how to found amazing cities. So the first thing to look at when you're founding a city is your base yields. So you can look at this by going to options, then going to the map options submenu and check the box that says show yield icons. And so on each tile, you're going to see an icon that looks kind of like corn that indicates food and an icon that looks like a gear to indicate production. So the more corn icons you see, the more food a tile produces, and the more gears you see, the more production a tile produces. And so food is important because it helps your city to grow, and production is helpful because it helps your city be more productive. So you'll be able to build more units and you'll be able to build districts, which make your city extremely productive and help you to go towards the various victory types. So the next thing you want to look for after the base yields is resources. So there are three different types of resources. You have strategic resources that will improve your military, luxury resources, which will provide amenities to make your people happy, and bonus resources, which are basically anything that's not considered a strategic or luxury resource. So the strategic resources are going to help with your military. So some strategic resources allow you to build specific troops. So for example, you cannot build light cavalry units such as horsemen or cavalry without horses. You cannot build swordsmen or knight without iron. You cannot build musketmen, bombards, or field cannons without niter. And you cannot build bomber or helicopter units without aluminum. Other types of strategic resources allow you to fuel units. So for example, you cannot heal ironclads without coal. You cannot keep your infantry the most productive without oil, and you cannot create nukes without uranium. In addition to allowing you to build specific troops and fueling specific units, you're going to need to unlock specific technologies within your technology tree before you can see some of these strategic resources. So you are not going to be able to see iron until you complete the bronze working technology. You won't be able to see niter until you complete engineering. You won't see aluminum until after radio, coal until industrialization, oil until steel, and uranium until combined arms. And you're going to want to prioritize researching these technologies, especially if you're going for a domination victory, because this is really going to help you to figure out where these resources are, so you can make sure to plop a city there as soon as possible to have these resources. Because if you do not have these resources, even if you unlock the technologies to build specific military units, without these resources, you will not be able to use the units that you actually know how to make. So next, there are the luxury resources. So luxury resources provide amenities to the four cities that need it the most. And in addition to this, the luxury resources will also provide gold, culture, faith, or science to the city that they're in. Now, one important thing to note is that duplicate resources do not provide extra amenities. So for example, if you say have two sugars in the same city, or even one sugar in one city and one sugar in another city, only the first sugar is going to count and the other will just provide its other yields such as gold, culture, faith, or science. So what you can do with these extra luxury resources is you can trade them to other civilizations, or you can just have their yields and make the other civilizations suffer. So some examples of this, as I mentioned, sugar, but you can also look at salt, diamonds, citrus, and the list goes on. Now, bonus resources do not provide amenities or help you to build military units, but they also increase your yields. So some bonus resources provide food, such as bananas, cattle, fish, rice, sheep, or wheat. Some provide gold, such as copper and crabs, and some provide extra production, such as deer and stone. So now that we've talked about the base yields and the resources you want to have in your city, now let's talk about founding a city that's going to be able to increase in population. So the reason why you want a higher population is because each citizen provides plus 0.5 science return and 0.3 culture return. And what that's going to do is going to help you get to the tech tree or the civic tree, which is just going to help you no matter what victory type you're going for. In addition to this, a larger population allows you to create more districts, and these districts are specialized parts of your city that produce specific yields. So for example, campuses provide additional science and great scientist points, which are going to really be helpful for a science victory. Theater squares are going to create a bunch of culture and great artists and great writer points, which are going to be really helpful for a culture victory. Holy sites are going to produce faith and great prophet points, which are going to be really great for a religious victory. Encampments are going to train your troops better and increase the production of your troops and provide great general points, which will help you in domination victory. And commercial hubs, harbors, and industrial zones provide gold and production, which are all just going to help you in any victory type. Harbors also are helpful for domination because they help you to train your Navy units, and entertainment complexes add additional amenities on top of your luxury resources. Now, another reason why you want to have a higher population is because each time you create a settler, it decreases your population by 1. So if you want to have settlers to expand your empire and have more and more cities, you need to at least have a population of 2. However, as you increase your population, there are some disadvantages. So there's a requirement for larger populations. So larger populations require more housing, they require more food, and they also require more amenities to keep your people happy and fed and housed. So first, let's talk about district limits. So as I mentioned before, each of the districts are going to create specialized parts of your city to increase your yields for a particular type of victory type. And so if you have a population of 1, you'll only have 1 district. So for example, if you're going for a science victory, you might want your first district to be a campus so you can increase your science and great scientist points. After the population of 1, each time your population increases by 3, you will be allowed to build 1 additional district. So at a population of 4, let's say, for example, you want to create an industrial zone, a population of 7, you want to create a commercial hub, and then at a population of 10, you could build an entertainment complex. Now, one factor that affects your population growth is the housing limit. So the housing limit determines how many people you can have in a city before the population growth slows down or stops. So when your population reaches 1 below the housing limit, it will start to grow 50% slower. So it will have a 50% reduction in your population growth. Once it reaches the housing limit, the population grows 75% slower. So there's going to be 75% reduction in your population growth. And once you go 5 beyond the housing limit, it will stop growing altogether. So you're going to have a 100% reduction in population growth. And all housing, no matter where you found the city, is going to have a baseline limit of 2. So one way you can increase your housing limit is through access to water. So if you have a freshwater city, so this is going to be a city that's founded next to a river or a lake, which will be indicated in dark green when you have your settler menu. This will increase the population limit from 2 up to 5. If you found a coastal city, which is indicated in light green, your housing limit is only going to increase from 2 up to 3. And if you found your city in somewhere with no water access, which is indicated in gray, you're just going to get the baseline housing limit of 2. So looking at an example, let's say you have a freshwater city, your housing limit is going to be 5, and let's say you're currently at a population of 3. Now your housing growth rate is going to be 1, and so there's going to be no reduction in your population growth. However, once your population grows to 4, now you're 1 within the housing limit, and so your growth rate is going to be reduced from 1 down to 0.5. Once your population reaches the housing limit at 5, your housing growth rate is going to be reduced from 1 all the way down to 0.25. And once you reach a population of 10, your housing growth rate is going to go from 1 all the way down to 0. So looking at this example again, let's say you are founding a city with no water access. Right off the bat, since your housing limit is 2 and your population is 1, you are automatically going to have 50% reduction in your population growth. Once you reach a population of 2, you're going to be down to 25% population growth. And once you reach a population of 7, there's going to be no growth in your city. So in addition to access to fresh water, there are some other ways to increase your housing in the early game. So you have aqueducts, which are unlocked with engineering. And so a non-freshwater city that has an aqueduct that is next to a river, lake, or mountain is going to have its housing limit increased from 2 or 3 all the way up to 6. If you have a freshwater city, your housing limit, which was at 5, is now going to increase by 2 up to 7. Some other things you can do to increase your housing are to build a granary, which also increases your housing by 2. And there are various improvements that increase your housing by 0.5. So a farm is going to be unlocked at the beginning of the game. Plantations are unlocked with irrigation. Pasture and camp are unlocked with animal husbandry, and fishing boats are unlocked with sailing. So later in the game, you're going to be able to further increase your housing limit with neighborhoods. So neighborhoods are unlocked with the urbanization civic, and the amount of housing they provide is determined by the appeal of the neighborhood. So there are various factors that affect the appeal of the neighborhood, but some of the biggest ones are rainforests, marshes, and pillage tiles. These things are going to drastically decrease your appeal and make your appeal was considered disgusting, and they're only going to increase your housing by 2. On the other side, you can have a breathtaking neighborhood, which has very high appeal. And this is going to be achieved by having neighborhoods that are close to mountains or coasts or natural wonders. So now that we've talked about the housing limit, another factor that affects your population growth is the required number of amenities. So a city with a population of 1 or 2 requires no amenities. A city with a population of 3 requires 1 amenity. And for populations 4 and above, there is a formula. So you take the population, you divide it by 2, and you subtract 1 to get the number of amenities that are required, and you must round up. So at a population of 2, you have no amenities required. At a population of 3, you need 1 amenity. In a population of 4, you still only need 1 amenity. In a population of 5, you're now going to need 2 amenities. And so basically at every odd number in your population growth, you're going to need 1 more amenity. So there are some bonuses to having amenities. So if you have 3 or more amenities than your required number of amenities for your population, your cities are going to be considered ecstatic. So this is going to increase your yield. So you'll get a plus 10% boost to culture, science, production, gold, and faith produced by the city. And in addition to this, it's going to help your city grow faster. So your population growth is going to increase by 20%. If you only have 1 or 2 more amenities than the required amount, then your cities will be considered happy, and your yields for culture, science, production, gold, and faith will increase by 5%, and your population will increase by 10%. And if you have the exact number of amenities required, your cities will be considered content, and there is no bonus. However, this can turn negative. So if you do not have the required number of amenities by 1 or 2, your cities will be considered displeased. And so rather than having increased yields, you actually have decreased yields. So you will produce 5% less culture, science, production, gold, and faith, and your population will grow 15% slower. If you have 3 or 4 less amenities than required, then your cities will be considered unhappy, and your yields will decrease by 10%, and your population growth will decrease by 30%. And things can get really bad if you have large cities without amenities. So if you have 5 or 6 less amenities than required, your yields are going to be decreased by 30%, and barbarian units will actually appear in your territory. They will pillage things, and they will attack your cities and just make life really difficult for you. But if you have 7 or more less amenities than required, then your yields are going to decrease by a whopping 60%. And these rebel units are not just going to appear randomly, they will appear frequently and just tear your civilization apart. So whatever you do, make sure you do not have extremely large cities without amenities, because it's just really going to hurt your game significantly. So the final factor to population growth, of course, is food. So each citizen requires 2 food per turn, and the excess food after this is going to go in your food basket. And the excess food is multiplied by your population growth percentages in order to determine how much food is saved in your food basket to increase your population. So with all this information that we've learned about population growth, we can actually calculate the turns it will take before your city will grow. So the first thing we need to figure out is your food surplus. So this is the amount of food you have, your food acquired, minus the amount of food that's required to feed the people. And then you're going to add to this that same number multiplied by your housing multiplier as well as your amenity bonus. So if your food basket becomes full, then your population will increase by 1. And so the turns to city growth formula is to take our food basket limit, subtract it by our food basket amount, divide it by our food surplus, and add 1. So let's consider a scenario where our population is 6 and our housing limit is 7. So that means we are 1 below the housing limit with our population. So our population growth in terms of our housing multiplier is going to be reduced by 50%, giving us a multiplier of 0.5. With a population of 6, we are required to have 2 amenities. And if we have 5 amenities, our city will be ecstatic and experience a 20% growth rate based on our amenities. So at a population of 6, since there's 2 food per citizen per turn, that's going to have a food required of 12. And if we produce 18 food per turn, then we're going to have 6 food per turn left after we just figure out the surplus. After this, we're going to multiply the number by our housing multiplier and our amenity bonus to get 3.6 food per turn. And so let's say our food basket limit is 41.8, and we already have 3.6 food in our food basket. This means it is going to take 12 turns at this current growth rate to grow our population from 6 up to 7. So now that we've talked all about this, let's just review everything we've learned. So the first thing you're going to want to look for when you're founding a city is your base yields. So more production means you'll have more units in better districts, and more food means you'll have a higher population. You also want to look for the various types of resources. The strategic resources will help you build a better military, and the luxury resources will help you have more amenities. And the bonus resources will just give you even more food, even more production, and even more gold. So talking about population growth, a higher population will give you higher yields, more districts and more cities, and more housing and more amenities will give you a higher population. So the rivers and lakes will give you more housing, aqueducts, granaries, improvements, and neighborhoods will provide even more housing, and an excess of amenities will give you a higher, more productive population, while a lack of amenities will cause population loss and rebels. This has been Professor Bapu. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, please leave a comment and I will do my best to get that additional information to you as soon as I can.